Senate, you know, is a deliberative. It's sort of like being the CEO of a company as a mayor or commissioner of finance or as a business person, and going from that to being a board member. A little bit like that, where you're setting policy, but you're not on a daily basis making those things happen. So you're a little distanced from people. You don't get that same daily emotional gratification that you get, you know, dealing with people at the local or state level and seeing the impact that it has on people's lives. But on the other hand, the issues are really, really big, and they affect millions of people. And there are times when I can make a phone call and it can have an effect on a lot of people. And so, again, you don't get that same gratification, but the responsibilities are really big.
Senator Corker, this is such a great honor to be able to have a chance to capture your time for just a few minutes. I know how busy you are, so thank you.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for letting me do it.
You know, I know you're speaking to the Cookeville-Putnam County Chamber annual dinner, and I think for small communities, maybe any community across our state, local business is so critical to our success, our survival. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I don't think there's any question that, you know, that's where the future jobs are, and in a community like this and every other community, that's where the focus should be. And, you know, I think so many times, you know, people get caught up in what some of the larger companies are doing, but, you know, look, I was a small business person. My company grew like so many do in our country, this great free enterprise system that we have. But you know, I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that, you know, one big company can create certainly a lot of jobs, but it's all those multitudes of smaller entrepreneurs and business owners that really are the fabric of America. And we need to make sure that, especially where the regulatory process, regulations that we put in place, that we don't damage them. You know, it's so much harder for a small entity to deal with massive federal regulations than it is for some of the larger entities that have these large departments of compliance and all of that. So no question, and that's why I look forward so much to talking to them tonight.
Yeah. Now, you grew up in Chattanooga.
I did.
Originally from South Carolina?
I moved there when I was 10 or 11,
okay.
Yes. I was studying Andrew Jackson to give a speech the other day, and you know, he came from South Carolina to Tennessee. We did the same thing when I was 10 or 11. So.
But I know you consider Chattanooga your home.
No question. I love it. I'm so proud of it, and I'm always so excited to get on the plane and come home on the weekends.
Well, every time I go to Chattanooga, I thank you, and I thank your leadership and your vision for that city, because I remember, I'm a Tennessean, I grew up in this area, and I remember it's really just transformed. That area has so transformed itself. But it didn't do that without vision and without planning and without a lot of work.
Right.
Can you share that?
Yeah, you know, our community really back in the middle 80s, you know, had a bad self-perception, and it was based in reality because things really weren't that great. And our community came together and we created a visioning process. It was called Vision 2000, and then we created an entity called Venture to actually help put in place and make 16 goals happen. And it took us along the way. We built the first phase of the aquarium in the early 90s. And then we sort of hit a plateau again. And, you know, I came in as mayor in 2001 after John Kinsey was mayor in 1997. He did a good job and focused on the south side of our community. But our community has been able to put in place the pieces that are necessary to cause a vision to become a reality. And we've had so many people, both in the private sector and in the public sector, that have helped make it happen. But I'll tell you, being mayor of Chattanooga from 2001 to 2005 and building the 21st century waterfront and putting in place something called MetroNet, which has now evolved into every Chattanoogan having, everybody within a 600 square mile area having 1 gigabyte of connectivity. The outdoor initiative, the public art, building the industrial park where Volkswagen is now located. I mean, all those things were so exciting to be a part of. But again, those things were built upon the past successes, and we've had a run now of about 25 years of some really good things happening in our community.
You know, I think that when I look at that, you're a very outdoors person. You're athletic. Did that influence Chattanooga really becoming such an outdoor sort of mecca? People just thrive to go there.
Well, obviously, the amenities that we have are God-given. I mean, you know, the bouldering and the rock climbing and all that. But there's no question, I was 50 years old when I became 50 while I was mayor, and just to make sure I was still alive, one Saturday I rode 100 miles on my bicycle up over the back of Lookout and around town. And when that happened, I saw that all these people were going kayaking. I went by a hang gliding place. I saw that people were caving. I saw they were, again, rock climbing, bouldering. And I realized that we really were a true mecca for outdoor activities. The next Saturday, I go into a tire place where I'm having my tires balanced and all that, and there was a guy who had moved to Chattanooga from Colorado with his technology company because he, you know, liked the outdoors. And I realized that if we really emphasized our outdoors, not only was it great for Chattanoogans to focus on, and we've done a wonderful job of creating places for Chattanoogans to go, but it also would be a great attraction for young people and for people who wanted to be involved in technology. And so we launched the Outdoor Initiative. We actually had more public input to the Outdoor Initiative than we did announcing the 21st Century Waterfront, which has been such a big success. But it just shows the popularity of that, and it's something that people can do on an everyday basis. It doesn't cost anything. And it really has differentiated, I think, our community from most in the country.
Oh, I think so, without a doubt. You're a worker. Anybody who knows you knows anything about you knows that you're dedicated, you're a strong public servant, you're a worker. I read that you started working at the age of 13, just doing odd jobs, picking up trash. I was so impressed to see that you started your own business when you were in your 20s, right? A construction business after getting a degree from UT. What has given you that kind of structure, that background?
You know, I came from a middle-class family, so I don't want people to ever think that I lived in poverty or something like that. I had, you know, great parents, but somehow at a young age, I just really liked to work. And you know, I picked up trash. I worked at Western Auto. I bagged ice. I, you know, delivered flowers. I mean, you name it. And then eventually I was old enough to work on a construction job at 16. And that's when I really found what I wanted to do in life. So I had the good fortune of knowing at a young age that I wanted to be in the construction business. I did go to UT, but then I went out and worked in the field where I actually learned how to build a building. And at 23 years old, I was in charge of building a regional mall down in Sarasota, Florida. And so at 25, I'd saved $8,000 and thought I could, you know, go in business and be successful. Fortunately, I started doing really small projects. Drive-in windows on the side of Crystal restaurants was something that began very early and created a cash flow, meaning that they turned over very quickly, and the company grew very rapidly and ended up operating in 18 states. But I just loved it. It was never work to me. And as a matter of fact, I tell my daughters, who are now 25 and 26, that, you know, you're so fortunate in life if you end up doing something that obviously you work hard doing, but it never feels like work because you enjoy it so much. I think that's a blessing for anybody in life. And so I never really looked at it as work. It was accomplishing something that was gratifying. And you know, again, I think for people to find that in life, it really changes their outlook with everything that they do.
Your background in business certainly makes you a strong senator, and someone who really has been so helpful to the state of Tennessee and to our nation. How do you see your work as a public servant being comparable to your work in business?
You know, one of the things that people ask me that a lot, and one of the things that I found most useful, if you think about building a project, building a shopping center, building some other kind of building, or you think about developing it, where you go out and buy the land and then build it. you have to be able to begin with the end in mind, right, and then put the pieces in place. And I find so much in the public sector that being able to envision where you want to go, but then having the ability to actually put the pieces in place to get there is sometimes difficult for people. And, you know, obviously in Washington, things move very slowly. I've been working on a bill now for a year and a half with a Democratic senator from Virginia, and finally, in the next few weeks, we're getting ready to go through a business markup in one of our committees. You have to have that persistence, and you know, you have to keep at it. And candidly, you don't want things to happen too quickly in Washington. I know people are frustrated with the pace, and I join them in that. But the fact is that I think that ability, again, when you think about building something, think about being mayor. The fact that I had been able to be in the business of building things, I think really helped me build the city, if you know what I'm saying, to have a vision and put those pieces in place. So I think that's been the most beneficial piece. And I think also, though, understanding what people go through when they start their businesses, the challenges, I think that that also has helped me in thinking about public policy and trying to ensure that when we do things, we're not in the process, we're not putting up roadblocks that make it harder for people to be successful.
You've traveled internationally a lot. You're the senior ranking member of the Senate on the Foreign Relations Committee. And you had an experience when you were younger going to Haiti that I think shaped possibly even your outlook on that. But can you share that moment, and then also what visiting all these countries has meant to you?
Sure, well, thanks. I went in business at 25, and by the time I was 28 or so, I knew that I was going to be financially successful. I mean, the company just took off, and, you know, I tell young students graduating from school that, you know, if you can master something, you're going to be successful in life. And I was fortunate to have found something where I got in the flow of being able to do that. So I read in my church bulletin that they needed someone to help lead a mission trip to Haiti, that someone who knew something about construction, because we were building something. And I went down there, and people were in such need and such, on the other hand, so appreciative for, you know, the things that we were doing. In many ways, we were much more positively affected than they were by being a part of that. I couldn't be traveling around the country or around the world doing mission trips with the company growing at 80%. So I began to be involved in my local community and saw we had a lot of people that didn't have decent housing, and I felt like I could do something about that. And so those things led me into the public arena, but it was about public policy. It was about solving a community problem. Now, on the other end of that, being on the Foreign Relations Committee, I'll say, number one, you know, I've been to a lot of places. Typically, I'm going to places that are troubled. You know, the Middle East, a great deal, a lot of other places. Number one, there is no country like America. None. I mean, there are a lot of nice places, no doubt, but I don't think there's a country in the world like America. Number two, I just say the world would not be the place that it is without U.S. leadership, whether it's democratic values, whether it's free enterprise, whether it's the compassion that our citizens show for other citizens. The United States is a remarkable country, and again, the world would not be the place that it is, and there's still so many improvements that need to occur. And people within those countries are the ones that need to make those things happen. But we no doubt are a beacon to the world, and I think sometimes citizens who don't have the opportunity to see that sometimes forget that.
In your travels, how are you received as an American? How are you received?
Well, again, I mean, I'm constantly going to, you know.
You're in Syria?
Yeah, I mean,
Middle
on the border of
East.
Syria, you know, I've been to Noah side, obviously, and have been to Syria itself, but since the conflict has broken out, it's mainly been in refugee camps on the Turkish border and Jordanian border. And, you know, we're received well, but we're received well. Sometimes when people are in such suffering and there's so many problems, they do expect America to do things sometimes that just cannot be done. So we're received always with respect. No doubt with some of the conflicts that have been involved, that have occurred around the world recently, there is some degree of frustration. But look, America is always respected. When America speaks, or someone who represents America is speaking, people listen, just because of the nation that we are.
You know, it seems like we've heard a lot about Congress being divided and our country being divided, and yet when I meet people, even globally, it seems like we all want the same things. You know,
Yeah.
we want the best for our families, and so we're really more alike than we are different. But
Yeah.
there's this underlying anger. Can you address that?
You talking about in Washington or in our
Well,
nation?
just in our country, really.
Yeah. So I think it's really astute that you would bring that up, and you know, people watch Congress and see that sometimes it's difficult to get to a place where we move the country ahead. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of likenesses among our citizens, but the country is very polarized right now. I mean, there's, you know, the country is divided, and some of that I think is driven by the fact we've gone through economic distress. People are worried about their own families and their own futures and are very inwardly focused, and you know, that makes it difficult to put in place public policy. And as much as people might not like hearing this, when they watch Washington and they see that it doesn't function particularly well right now, they're disappointed, but it actually reflects them more closely than they think. Now, I will say this, in spite of that, we should be much, much more accountable regarding moving things ahead. And you know, you can sit in a committee hearing and see somebody on the other side of the aisle that you know shares some of those similarities that you talked about, and I think our job is to find those people and to work with those people towards a solution, which is what we've been doing on this bill I've been telling you about over the last 18 months, and I think it's going to become reality. But it's more difficult when the country's divided.
How do you feel about being a senator?
You know, I was a business guy. When I woke up in the morning, I knew that things were going to happen that day that were constructive, that moved things ahead. I was Commissioner of Finance for our state for 17 months to help a new governor, and I knew when I woke up that day, things were going to happen. With a flick of a pen, I could make something occur. As mayor, you know, to me that was a civic job. You know, we threw deep on every play. I mean, it wasn't a political job. I had 4 years to get everything possibly done that could happen, and very productive, very productive. The Senate, you know, is a deliberative. It's sort of like being the CEO of a company as a mayor or commissioner of finance or as a business person, and going from that to being a board member. A little bit like that, where you're setting policy, but you're not on a daily basis making those things happen. So you're a little distanced from people. You don't get that same daily emotional gratification that you get, you know, dealing with people at the local or state level and seeing the impact that it has on people's lives. But on the other hand, the issues are really, really big, and they affect millions of people. And there are times when I can make a phone call and it can have an effect on a lot of people. And so, again, you don't get that same gratification, but the responsibilities are really big. And so it's almost like you have to, you evolve from sort of getting that daily, weekly gratification. You evolve to realize that it's a very mature thing that you're dealing with. It impacts a lot of people, and you just have to understand that it's a whole different kind of thing being a legislator. But to be one of 100, to wake up every day and know that you have that tremendous privilege that Tennesseans have given you, not only to represent them, represent really everybody in the country, because the things I do affect people in California and Minnesota and other places. So you just sort of balance that off and thank people of Tennessee for that privilege.
It's a marathon, isn't it? I mean, you're not in
is.
for a sprint. You're in it for the
No, I
long
mean, if you're going to have an effect, you know, senators have 6-year terms, and if you're going to have an effect, you got to know that it's not going to be this month. Now, today, I know this is going to be presented later, but today I had a long conversation with the president about an issue that I think is very important to our country. And do I feel like I might have helped shape things a little bit? I think possibly so. And so, it's those little things that they're about big issues, right. Those little shapings that I think make a difference, and you have to realize that there's great value in that, and to be active and to be out there and to be forward matters a great deal to our country.
I think just learning a lot about you recently. I've watched you a long time, and I've admired the way that you have worked with both sides of the aisle and been supportive of your state on so many levels. And when you look back at your life journey, sort of the path that you take, does it feel like all these things really led you to be here at this moment?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. There are times when, no doubt, being again in the Senate, a deliberative body, legislative body, not what I've done my whole life, where you wake up and you make things happen. There's no doubt been times when I wonder, how'd I end up here? Why'd I do this? Okay. And certainly the first 6 weeks I was in the Senate, I had those thoughts every day. I thought, what have I done? But I think about, the mission trip to Haiti, started working on the inner city on the weekends, creating a nonprofit that helped over 10,000 families have decent, fit, and affordable housing. A governor ran for office and wanted to do something at the state level relative to that. I ended up serving on a task force. I ended up being asked to serve on the THDA board. I was then asked by a governor to be commissioner. It just seemed like the dots all connected. But again, it began with, I know it began with going to Haiti and, having that impact of knowing people, seeing people in need, and knowing that you could affect that, and candidly realizing that public service is very gratifying. I tell young students who come, there's a lot of 8th grade students that come to Washington often, right? It seems like it's always the 8th grade. And I tell them that, all of us can be involved in public service. You don't have to run for elective office. There are people in your neighborhood, there are people at your church, there are people at your school that have needs. And I don't think there's anything in the world that makes a human being feel more whole in a secular sense than knowing that you've given of yourself to make someone else's life better. So yes, I think the dots have been connected. I'm so appreciative that things have along the way shaped my life as they have, and that people like you and others have allowed me to do what I'm doing right now in Washington.
You've had a great life partner in your wife, Elizabeth. She's been with you in this whole journey, it seems. And how did you guys meet?
So we met on a blind date. A friend of mine she was living in Knoxville. I went to UT. Some of my best friends in life all emanated out of that experience, obviously, and she was decorating his home, and there was this thing coming up, and he said, man, you got to call her, and so I did, and I couldn't get her to go. She kept, this odd guy from Chattanooga calling out of the blue, and finally she gave me this excuse one night. This was going on several nights in a row, not over a long period of time, but over 2 or 3 nights, and finally she said, I just don't have time. And I thought, here I am, getting like 3 hours sleep a night, and one night a week staying up all night. And finally I said, if I've got time, I know you have time. And she stepped back. I think it was a shock to have some guy talking to her that way. And we went out, and we've dated ever since. And she has absolutely no interest in the public arena. You know, she thought, at the time I was building shopping centers all around the country, and it was a go-go business, and you know, our company was so exciting for people to walk in the door. FedEx packages would be stacked up on each sides of the reception desk. And so here all of a sudden I wake up one day and tell her I was thinking about running for public office, and you know, it didn't go over so well, okay? And you know, she's you know, to give me the leash, if you will, to be out away from her constantly and do what I do is I appreciate very much. But she's my best friend, and I you know, there's nobody that I'd rather spend time with.
That means a lot. She's a great collector of art.
She is.
I've seen the art in your office, and that means a lot to the Tennesseans who stop in there and see that piece.
Yeah. Means a lot to our employees that love coming to their offices. But you know, we were so involved in promoting also the arts in Chattanooga. We knew that it would bring a lot of creative people to town, and it has. And as a result of that, so many artists around the state have said, hey, look, we'd love to display our art in your office. So I'm thankful to them, and I know, as you mentioned, Tennesseans do appreciate coming in and seeing it.
This has been a wonderful experience. I hate we're out of time. I didn't get through half the things I wanted to talk to you about. Do you do yoga?
You know, I've done a lot of yoga. I'm not as good as you, I know.
I'm not good.
But right now, I'm only running and walking and riding my bike. So I need to get back with the program. I'm 61 years old now, and the flexibility issue is something I certainly need to address. But thank you for asking, and I'm sorry if I filibustered and didn't allow you to get through all your questions.
No, you did not filibuster. This was a great, great opportunity, and I so very much appreciate your service and your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.